Hey, random people and racers of YouTube. This is a quick subjective review of two of the best boots in the market. You know what they are. They're the Supertech R from Alpinestars and the Sidi Mag-1 boots. These are both considered to be the best road racing boots available, and you see them on all kinds of pro riders. So I just want to get into some of the advantages and disadvantages of each when compared to each other, because you don't see a lot of comparison tests between these two great boots. You'll get a lot of technical reviews, which I would highly suggest you take a look at if you're interested in buying one of these. Those technical reviews can be found at sites like sportbiketrackgear.com and revzilla.com. Those are great sources for information on the technical side of things. They have great customer support. I fully recommend either of those sites to help you make your decision. But on a more practical level, I'll break these down a little bit. So let's start with my older boot. I'm going to move the Alpinestars aside. We've got the Sidi Mag-1. So Sidi has been making boots forever, and they've done a ton of R&D, and they definitely excel in certain aspects, and they're kind of lacking in others. So the best part about this boot is the ventilation, which you can see pretty well throughout the boot. This full perforation, along with something you can't really see well because it's got all this this off-track mud that got caked in. But there are these two intake vents. They give air to the forefoot and kind of flow the air through the boot really well. Inside, not too fancy. It's got this good wicking material, but it's not too excessively comfortable, I would say, and it does a good job of keeping your foot cool is the primary success of this. The other advantage of this boot, if you look at this, it's got a super slim profile, and that's not really something to be forgotten. That's an underrated aspect of this boot. It gets you really close, so you can lock that heel in, lock that ankle into the bike, and it's really a nice advantage of this portion of the boot. Where that advantage turns into a disadvantage is kind of in the forefoot here. It's a very narrow boot, and I would say if you're trying to walk around a lot in the pits with it, and if you're spending a full day in these boots, and your feet aren't narrower, then you're going to kind of feel it. It was a problem for me. Definitely were the type of boots that I would take off every time I got off the track. And so just uncomfortable as a shoe. As a boot on the bike, it was great. And it did a great job of protecting my feet in the two crashes it's been through. As you can see, it's pretty banged up, but it held up really well. You can see that I could rebuild these different parts, which is the great advantage of the Sidi over the Alpinestars, is rebuildable heel cup, which you can do in Alpinestars too. Rebuildable toe sliders, which you can do in Alpinestars, and all these little replaceable nuggets. It doesn't have the replaceable sole, which was a big advantage of the previous iteration, the Vortice that Sidi made. That would have been a really solid addition to this boot. But overall, a fantastic boot, really comfortable on the bike, not great as a shoe, great protection, great ventilation, nice and narrow. I would definitely suggest this if you have a narrower foot. Otherwise, I would go with the Alpinestars. So I moved this track debris off. So the Alpinestars is like the most quintessential boot on any paddock, basically. This is the one. This is the one everyone raves about. All the pros and everybody uses this boot now. It seems like 90% of everybody uses this. And so the advantage of this one is getting in and out is a little bit more convenient. Even with the inner booty system, which you probably are familiar with, this inner support system for ankle support, even with that considered, it's still a little bit easier to get in and out of than the Sidi with its more complex ratcheting system here. So that's an advantage. The biggest advantage is that these are actually more comfortable, just on the bike or off the bike, even as a shoe, walking around the paddock. These are much more comfortable than the Sidi, and definitely give you more room in the forefoot if you have a wider foot or even a normal size foot. These are much more suited to actually give you a comfort fit. They're a little heavier though, so that's the disadvantage with these. If weight is a real issue for you, which I don't think it should be on the bike, then these are kind of at a disadvantage compared to the Sidi. Ventilation, I would say these are also at a little bit of a disadvantage compared to the Sidi. When you compare these two, the airflow of the Sidi is phenomenal. On a cold day, your feet actually get cold. Whereas these you feel warm the whole time, but they're good enough at ventilating. Safety-wise, I haven't crash tested these myself, but I'm sure they do really well. Ankle support's super good. probably, it feels like when I'm in there, it's probably a little more secure of an ankle support than the Sidi is. And sliding, I'm assuming it does even better than the Sidi. It's got a lot of these hard parts and semi-hard parts around the different contact areas that you'll most likely get into when you're crashing. So I would say construction-wise, the Alpinestars gets the edge. Features, I would say that the Sidi gets a little bit of an edge with a little bit more rebuildable nature of it. Fit, Alpinestars is way better. Unless you have a narrow foot, then either of them are great, and the Sidi would probably be a good choice for you. Ventilation, Sidi, and just the quality of the build, and I think everything considered for my foot in particular, I would probably say the Alpinestars is a better boot overall, but only slightly, and mainly because of the comfort. Sidi, I would say, is a better boot if you're looking sheerly for weight and ventilation. Thanks.